All right, Athlete Builder back at it. Singular host this week. I'm your guy, Jim Beebe, and as always, we are brought to you by the AEA Institute and the Mental Edge Academy. Hit me up. We have a new summer boot camp series that is launching June 1st. There's still time for teams to get involved. It's an all-inclusive package for developing teams mentally. This past weekend, what I'm doing today is completely different than what I've done in the past. I love what Zach Evanesh does all the time in that he'll go to an event like Sorenex's Summer Strong, and on the way back home to New Jersey, he'll be recording in his car as he's driving because he wants to get his thoughts out there as quickly as possible. I'm not quite as good as Zach like that. I waited a couple days. So it's the Ohio State Football Coaches Clinic this past weekend. Started Thursday night and concluded with the spring game on Saturday. I was there for all of it. I'm going to bring you the takeaways and best practices from the top of the Ohio State football organization, arguably one of the best programs out there, up there with the likes of Alabama and most recently IU. Great takeaways. This is my third time attending, but my first time as a vendor. And it was great because I was representing the AEA Institute and the Mental Edge Academy, where those in attendance are all high school football coaches, mostly from Ohio, but I saw people there from as far south as Florida. There were those from Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Virginia, met a ton of people. But I was representing the Mental Edge Academy and bringing that to those teams and schools. I also had a chance to meet with Ohio State again because they are vetting our platform for incorporation with their school program. So we were able to move a little bit forward there, but it'll be a long process. And today I'm going to share the biggest takeaways and best practices that any coach or leader can apply immediately. You'll hear about Ryan Day's C's of Leadership, and the keynote speaker was none other than John Gruden. So if you see right here, this is the program they put out. In attendance, John Gruden, like I said, was a keynote speaker, but we heard from everybody. Ryan Day spoke, both coordinators, Matt Patricia, Arthur Smith, all the coaches spoke. So first impression was elite standards of excellence all the way around. They over-delivered. I think the cost for an attendee was like $75 or $85. It was more for a vendor, of course. There's no way they didn't over-provide value. They provided 2 to 3 times the value in just the food alone. Like, here's a nice program and all, but here is a leather-bound portfolio that everyone all got. So the food alone. Then on top of that, there's access to elite coaches, the networking, all the vendors in attendance. We were over-serviced at every level. Great. So the takeaway from that piece, great organizations don't meet expectations. They exceed them. And not just by a little bit. Not just by a little bit. It was so well run, all the staff. It was outstanding from beginning to end. Next, access to elite leadership. So the speakers I mentioned, Ryan Day, Matt Patricia, Arthur Smith, John Gruden, they also had a breakout session Thursday night. It went past 10 p.m. So every coach they're all in the indoor facility. All the coaches have their own whiteboards, all the position coaches. And if you coach a certain position like wide receivers or offensive line, you just walk over to that whiteboard. And Ohio State's coach is there for full access until that guy either got tired or they just shut the whole thing down. And we were there past 10 p.m. doing chalk talk, going over every little thing you might think of. In addition, the next day, the first day, each of the main speakers spoke. Main speakers are the coordinators, the head coach, and John Gruden. The next day, each position coach spoke as well. Before each coach was introduced, we were instructed to ask questions. They wanted them to make it interactive. They wanted more and more improvement. So, big takeaway there, elite programs are transparent and generous with knowledge. They don't gatekeep, they develop others. That piece I thought about. My first thought was, why are they giving all this away? And it was the 94th annual Coaches Clinic event that Ohio State has hosted. And for decades, the big programs had continued to do this, but it seems to have just dwindled away, where Ohio State's one of the few that still carries on this tradition. They're giving away their best practices. And Louis Simmons, the legendary coach at Westside Barber, was asked about that too. And he said that we'll give it all away because most people simply won't do it. they won't hold the standard. It's not the lack of knowledge that's out there. It's the teamwork and accountability that pushes people to actually have the discipline to do the work. So Ohio State was sitting there giving away their best stuff. When we had Ryan Day, he led off with culture being the number one asset. Over 50% roster turnover. Huge. The transfer portal decimates teams, requires them to rebuild. They embrace it. I always say this. I quote Darwin. He said it wasn't the strongest that survived or the smartest that survived. It's the ones that adapted the best. So he emphasized that culture must remain constant. Coach turnover, athlete turnover didn't matter. It absolutely had to be ingrained from day one and relentlessly pursued. Culture isn't optional, it's the foundation. And from there, he kept building and building and really emphasized his C's of leadership. Now, I'm not going to be able to highlight this as well as he did, but everything that he points out here are things that I put out in my book, things that the AEA Institute are about, things like these kinds of components are the same modules that we have put into our app. So his C's of leadership, they start with connection and care. No one cares about how much you know until they know how much you care. That phrase, he starts with that, talking about how you must connect and care about all the people on your staff and the players. And how do you do that? It takes time. There's no getting around it. I hear coaches, and I've been guilty of this myself, where you're looking for something quicker. Can I send a message or a text? And those things count. They matter, but you still got to spend time. And then from there, for leadership, it goes to character, integrity, and discipline, which, as you know, are two of Athlete Builder's core values, integrity and discipline. We start with those two. And he emphasized that, doing the best you can all the time, even when no one's watching. And he even said, as cheesy and as cliche as it sounds, it's to build the best version of yourself. Constant improvement. That's that Kaizen third core value that we have. He goes from there to competence and consistency. That's that knowledge component in the athlete builder piece. Do you know your job? Great. You're just getting started then. Do you know it so well that you can get the person behind you better? Because what if you get hurt? You don't want a big drop off. Do you know the players around you? I would see this all the time when Jack was playing. He's in his fifth year. He's a senior at Ball State playing linebacker, and someone else might be lining up in front of him or next to him who's he hasn't been around as long, might be slightly out of position. I would have to go over there and move that person into position so that the gaps are fulfilled. It gives that player the chance to make the best play and then enables Jack to do the same. So competency and consistency. Do you know your job? Do you know those around you? The consistency is important because it's the reliability component. People buy a certain car, they buy a certain set of tires for their car based on the reliability. They want to know that they can get a return on that asset. The field we were standing on was an asset. The players are assets. Their knowledge are assets. Can they be competent and smart on every play? Next thing on leadership, this part was a little challenging for folks because this is a bit of a feeling component. The courage and resilience. The courage to call people out. Their main facility is called the Woody Hayes facility or the Woody Hayes Center. And you talk about what happens outside of the Woody. Woody Hayes is the legendary Ohio State coach. What happens outside of there? Are people making bad decisions? Do you have the courage to go up to your teammate and say, hey, it's not what we're doing here? Do you have the courage to call people out on that? Do you have the courage to push them for growth? It's more than just running through the line. Then how do you articulate? So in the athlete builder world, there's a mindset, knowledge, and teammates, we call it. And teammates is a representation of how people communicate with the leadership team, teammates on the field, and the support team. Sports psychologists, nutritionists, GAs, parents, friends. Are you clear? Are you effective? Are you purposeful? He wants the communication to be the linchpin of putting the other C's into practice. Because just because you think it has to come out of your mouth. So you highlighted all 5 components: the connection and care, the character, the competency and consistency, the courage and resilience, and the communication. Leadership is not a title, he would say. It's a behavior. It's a way of conducting your life. You then also highlighted within that leadership speech that leaders must be seen, felt, and heard. Leaders must show up visibly, athletes must feel their presence, and communication must land. That comes from the staff. It also comes from the captains. It comes from anybody on the field. So here's what's outstanding about this one component right here about leaders must be seen, felt, and heard. 2 years ago, early on, I was blessed to have Mickey Marotti, the head of all strength and conditioning at Ohio State, the associate AD. He was on this podcast. And when I asked him about leadership, he goes, "Leaders must be seen, felt, and heard." That was 2 years ago. Same phrase, same nomenclature. So Ryan Day is articulating the same thing that Mickey's articulating. So it's consistent across the board and across the staff. So when coaches or the outside press or public or the players themselves want to ask about what is leadership, their message is clear. It's clear. It's consistent. It's communicated. All the C's that Ryan Day, that Coach Day highlighted, he pointed out again in his speech, which I heard 2 years ago. You want to tie this leadership to your work. Your mental performance equals your communication plus consistency and a whole lot more. So generous with their time there. The program identity, there's two words or phrases inside that indoor practice facility, which was gorgeous. On one end, on one wall were all the national title banners. On the other wall were all the playoff years they made the playoffs. In the end zones, they had one word, it said fight. In the other end zone, it said tough love. And I remember those two phrases from the last times I was there. They were still in the facility, but they were highlighted differently. They were also in an Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line, one of Ohio State's great coaches and title winners. And he talked about he wants the players to fight. He wants them to be competitive. He wants them to fight each other for the best play, their best position on the play, their intensity, their mat drills, in the weight room and being intentional, in the classroom, to make the right decisions. Now, he doesn't want them going out there and getting in fistfights. He wants them disciplined under pressure. But the fighting is a competitive spirit that he wants the staff, all those involved, and the players especially, to fight for every little inch. It all comes down to every little inch mattering, and he gets that. It's that compound interest effect that he wants everyone fighting for. The tough love is very, very hard for most people because your ego is on display, and sometimes that can hurt. Tough love is you're going to hear some type of assessment, reaction to what you did, and they call it tough love because we're loving you because we want you to get better, but it's tough because it doesn't feel good because you didn't do something as well as you could or should have done. And they highlight that. They want you to be open to it. I've said this many, many times. And Ray Dalio, top of the food chain investor who ran Bridgewater and was managing billions and billions of dollars. His book has a logo on it, and where it's just this loop that constantly loops and then advances higher and loops and advances higher and loops and advances higher. And it's a feedback loop that you can only advance for a little ways until you get feedback from others to find out what's not going well, what needs to be adjusted. And until that occurs and the adjustments are made, you cannot advance. And it's going to be true with Ohio State, defending champion IU, me, my relationships. I'm going to keep doing so well until there's a limiting factor. Taught in business schools everywhere, there's going to be a limiting factor. Until you figure out what that is or someone points it out to you, you'll keep making the same mistake. The business won't advance. The team won't advance until that feedback comes in. It gets addressed. Then you can advance again. Break it down anywhere. Your financial situation. Someone's approaching the batter's box. Your faith. So they want that tough love so you get the next iteration. You got to be comfortable with that so that if I have 100 different iterations, my product is absolutely better. I'm standing there as a vendor and people will walk by and I'm talking to them about mental performance and our app and how we use it. And I would say, hey, I'm just looking for feedback. I want to create an environment where they're comfortable telling me what they like and don't like. So I set up Zoom calls for the following week, this upcoming week, with these folks saying, hey, I want 100 ways our product doesn't help you. So if I get all 100 of those and implement them, it's now 100 times better. And the next person I talk to is going to be like, wow, anything I thought that could be a problem was already addressed. Like we hunt for weaknesses. So you see it right there in Ohio State's practice facility. Fight to compete to get better and get the tough love, get the feedback so you can adjust your knowledge so you can continue the fight. High performing cultures embrace discomfort and accountability. Even the professionalism and physical standard. All coaches that walk by with Ohio State, they're all in shape. There's no 400-pound fat slobs walking around. They're all in shape, representing well. I remember Tony Robbins would say that you don't want to be great in some areas of your life and terrible in others. It still happens, but most people don't feel great when that's the case. If I'm great at work and I come home and my home life sucks, well, a good chunk of my day sucks. So those coaches who are on this enormous microscope, just like the other top programs, we're all in physical great shape. There was no disconnect between the message and the lifestyle. You can't demand discipline if you don't model it. You must be seen, felt, and heard. If you're harping on fighting to be the best version of yourself and getting that tough love, well, coach is going to need to fight to be the best person that they can be and get the tough love that, hey, man, you're unhealthy and out of shape. That's not good for you long term. We care about you long term. Let's maintain that standard. Keynote was Thursday night and it was outstanding. The John Gruden speech, and I think it was about an hour. I think it was maybe scheduled for 50 minutes, but I think he went over. And I don't know that he inhaled. It was just nonstop. And for a while, he was going from topic to topic. And I'm like, what's he doing? I don't see I need things to be kind of laid out, structured, like bullet points, etc. And he did it when I look back at his speech by offense, defense, special teams, intangibles. But he went so quickly. So every little point he was trying to make, someone else was managing the slide presentation, and it wasn't really slides, it was videos. And so rules of thumb on getting people to learn things, show them before instead of just simply articulating. And he would articulate a point, and that scene on the football field from actual plays in college and pro might be rewound 4, 5, 6, 7 times to illustrate the point. His energy was enormously high, and he was just going through his entire Rolodex of knowledge really, really quickly in an hour just to spout out different things in all phases of the games that are enormous best practices, because he knew that every attendee there was different. They weren't all coaching the same position. And if he could impact every one of them positively, he was going to cast a broad enough net to do that. So he was just going offense, defense, but the quarterback play, the running back play, the exchange, enormous high energy, enormous attention to detail, kept going back and forth, showing this point. Use the film plus the visuals to reinforce his teachings. Things that he pointed out. He wanted to, things that you can absolutely control. And if you're always controlling for optimum inputs, puts must improve. If you're controlling for optimum inputs, outputs must improve. Something that you can absolutely work on. Those walkthroughs the day before games, he wants them perfect. I want perfect walkthroughs. And how do you work on perfect walkthroughs? You go through the play, everything's in slow motion. He goes, I don't need the DBs to intercept the passes. I know that if there were actually a live play and it was coming this slowly, I know the DBs could intercept every ball. We don't need that. It just slows down the walkthrough. I want perfect walkthrough. So he went over that. Just the actual huddle itself, how everyone lines up, not just in formation, in proximity of formation. And then he showed examples of his team doing it. He was blessed with his first coaching stint at the lowest level. He was coaching under Tom Landry, Hall of Fame coach for the Dallas Cowboys. And when Tom Landry was going over plays, he was using different colors for offense, defense, or actual routes and what was happening to help illustrate the point. And so the brain, and we're big on neuroplasticity, training the brain, He used different colors to help drive home what the play structure actually was. Kept going on and on, all the way to the end. He was highlighting what does effort look like. And he talks about his favorite player all time, Robert Mathis from the Indianapolis Colts. He had videos of Robert on one side of the field playing defensive end, running to the opposite side of the field back towards the secondary to help make the tackle. When a passion drives management, he goes, I want energy. And he would show, this is exactly what I want. So I, as a coach, talk about high energy people, and I could talk quickly and raise my voice. But here's the exact example of what we're wanting on every play. Kept pointing out how the coaches are teachers, not just motivators, but they're everything. They're your priests sometimes, and confidence, and psychologists, your friends and mentors. He wanted every coach putting out their best effort because he just absolutely loves football. And he started off with, I just love football. So huge gift. I got to actually meet him very briefly right after his speech. He was interviewed by local media. I'm in line. I had my phone keyed up because on his show, he'll highlight gifts from people that send him gifts. And he highlighted a rug from Foot Stompers. So shout out Foot Stompers and Jack Beebe. That's his side hustle, making custom rugs for athletes and teams. And he sent one to John Gruden. He put it on his show, and it was put on social media. Jack highlighted it. So I pulled it up and I said, hey, do you remember this? He goes, and John goes, was that you? I go, no, it was my son. Jack did that. I wrote this book. I work with teams and coaches. I wanted to offer you my book. It's all I could really give you, and see if you want to come on my Athlete Builder show. So I gave him my card. We'll see if anything comes from it. He's a high level guy. And so I know he's very busy. So if that happens, that'd be very, very great. But I was able to meet him, take a picture. I had an outstanding time. The next day, Friday, a little personal moment, got to meet with another legend. It was Mickey Marotti again. You already heard me mention him once about recording with us a couple years ago. He was gracious enough to write a recommendation on the back of my book. This is my third time meet with him. And every time I would meet with Coach Mick, he's always said yes. Yeah, I'll make some time for you. Someone not associated with the program, coming from a different state. And when I call coaches up or entities or organizations, and they say, yes, I can come meet with you, and they're being generous and philanthropic with their time by just giving that away to me and their knowledge. And they all have plenty of money. So I always just bring books. And I'll bring books that you can see all the ones behind me. I bring books that were important to me or that helped me improve. Last time I was here, I was meeting with Anthony Schlegel. He's on their staff. He was also on our podcast. Awesome dude. As much energy as anybody I've ever seen. And I brought books, and I said, well, make sure you give one to Coach Mick. I know Coach Mick is Catholic, so I brought him a book about the Eucharist, and he was happy to have that. So my third time meet with him, a one-on-one conversation, spent an hour with me, and this time he gave me a book. So you see it right here, Chop Wood by Kerry Water. It was his own version. It's already highlighted, and it was required reading 1 year for the entire team. So very humbling that he gave me a gift. I was telling him, we're talking, just catching up before we even started our discussion about things that we were having fun with. And one thing is that my wife is a big history nerd, and she loves the podcast History That Doesn't Suck. And Mickey's face lit up like it was Christmas. He goes, I would love that. And so the host is a professor out of a university in Utah. And so we went to he came and gave us a tour, a speech at Butler University about something historical about U.S. history, Revolutionary War to Civil War. But he made it cool and interesting, right? And he has a book coming out. So I pre-ordered a book, sent it to Mick. So the exchange continues. What I like is that whenever I meet with Coach Mick, our relationship progresses. He teaches me something. I offer him what I know. Um, our relationship seems to compound over time. And we always leave with give value first. And when you do that, you give, and then eventually you receive. And if you give enough times and never receive anything back, maybe you got to decide who you're giving things to. But working, just another example of the professionalism, the high standard of an experience it was working with him, and to share things. Got to talk about the AEA Institute, the Mental Edge Academy, They're looking at it. No promises that they move forward, but just kind of looking at it. And I'm just like, hey, tell me how it sucks. Tell me what's wrong with it. See if you see value in it, which she said there was. See if there's a way we can incorporate. So we'll see. Could happen in next week. It might be in 2 years. Might never happen. Other little things. Just the vendors themselves I met with. Great exchanges. Met with Daniel Sayer or Daniel Sayin. Sorry, excuse me. And you might recognize that last name with the current coach or current quarterback. But right here, light helmets. He deals with Pop Warner kids. You have these kids that are 60, 70 pounds with super heavy helmets. He's like, they can't hold them up. Hurts their neck. So he and his R&D team put together different helmets that are lighter, different composites that are still as indestructible, but easier to work with for the kids. Then I meet with Heather Wenrick with Elite Fundraising. Her whole job is going around to schools, showing how they can raise funds better to make their school budget last a little bit longer. And so had a great time sitting right next to her, learn more about what happens at these events, what's like being a vendor at these events. But she's making an impact and she's having a great time doing it. At every point in time, just surrounded by folks just trying to make an impact and do their best. There's innovation was happening at all levels. The whole football ecosystem was more than just coaching. There are a number of times the student athletes, so it's the indoor facility, they're walking through, heading towards the locker room, which is a sacred place. No one's allowed in there except for coaches and athletes. No one at all, ever. Even the main logo in their weight room, the big block O, it's known, hey, don't step on that. It's bigger than who we are. Our team is bigger than who we are. Reflect that in our identity and our reverence. So everything they were doing there was trying to build that identity. Every student that walked by, they were walking by my booth, I would say good morning or hello, hello. They all looked me in the eye, nodded, said hello, courteous, professional, polite. It was just another example of turning boys into men and men into leaders. And it was outstanding. Talked to a couple kids. They mentioned that about having, pre-practice jitters. What's their processes for that? Talk to them about any kind of mental challenges and things they're struggling on, how they're working through it. Offer my tips and suggestions. Show them how we do it with our app. Learned how they were doing it with their staff. And they're just regular people doing their best they can under this huge microscope, knowing that they can't lose anything. How can they shift their focus so they're not overwhelmed by that? And they're just 18, 19, 20, 22-year-olds trying to figure it out. But even the elite athletes struggle mentally. Huge need for mental performance system, as long as alongside the physical, the nutritional, all of it matters. But everyone I talked to, they're sitting there doing their best. The second evening, they had Ohio's finest recognition. They honor coaches across all levels, high school, college, and pro. Most of them had Ohio State ties at the college and pro level. But these high school guys, they're anywhere in the state. And the coach they had on, I think in the last 10 years, he won something like 6 titles and was runner up 3 times. So just elite level coaching. And the idea that this is the 94th time that Ohio State's done this clinic, so they believe that they need to give back to the football world in Ohio. The NFL Hall of Fame is there. Football started in Ohio, and they feel that football is built throughout the state. And the way to do that is to constantly give back. So one of the highlights was Tim Tyrell. He's a high school coach, and that's the guy that had all the titles in the last 10 years. His emphasis was on being relentless. And at the high school level, you're getting a stipend. You're not making a ton of money doing it. And the only way you can be relentless, this is with one of our core values, is enjoyment. You have to love what you're doing, because the things that you have to do are usually awful to do sometimes. I remember one football coach had to mow his own field because they didn't have the staff and the grounds crew to do it. But sometimes you're asked to do a bunch of things that suck. And if you love the end result and what you're building, then you'll do all those things that suck. And with the huge time commitment that it requires, The only way he's allowed and enabled to do the things that he sucks is by having the family support from his wife. She knows that this is part of his identity and what they as a team are about. So she supports that. And he even made a joke that once football's over with and it really kind of winds down, which is almost never, but when it really does and it has a little bit of a lull, he's home more often. And she's like, man, what are you doing here? You're kind of cramping my style. So that was funny. But his emphasis on partnership and family support, that to be relentless requires the support at home. Success is not it's not an individual thing. It's all supported. A couple other things I noticed. We were allowed to go watch practice. They didn't hold anything back. We were allowed to attend the spring game. It was a full immersion experience, learning plus application. So the big picture takeaways I had: culture is greater than talent. Leadership is behavioral. Details win. Relationships matter. Mental performance is essential, and over deliver always, which is great because this all ties back to what we're doing at the AEA Institute with the Mental Edge Academy. That's why this matters, and it's what we're building. Everything I saw reinforces the need for structured mental performance training because it's what drives behavior. So, very grateful for the Ohio State staff. Appreciate the opportunity. If you want elite results, you need elite standards every single day, and that's what we saw this past weekend. If you're a coach looking to build this into your program, email me or check out the Mental Edge Academy at the AEA Institute. My email, jim@athlete-builder.com. And if you have more questions and ideas and thoughts for this show, email us at info@athlete-builder.com and hit me up for the Mental Edge Academy, the summer boot camps we have going on right now. They'll all be starting in June, but people are getting signed up now in advance. It's the time to do that. So again, thanks to Ohio State and OHIO. See ya.